Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today, I have the absolute pleasure to host Raj Mehta, who is currently the VP at Moxie Pest Control, specifically technology and product. Now, Raj has started off his career as a software engineer, and he narrowed it down to the product development side. But I want to hear it from Raj himself. Can you tell me more about your background and how it led you to becoming the VP of technology and product at Moxie Pest Control?
Sure. Yeah. Great being here, Aryan, on this podcast. So, in terms of my background, you rightly said, I did an undergrad in computer science, took the traditional path, started working as a software developer at InfoEdge, which is also called Naukri.com in India. And it was a big platform, recruiting related platform where I learned a lot of stuff, specifically related to how to scale technology and how do you build products with that scale in mind, as well as making sure that there are robust systems, security is in place, and things like that. As I was building those projects and products, I realized that it was fun and I was learning a lot of things, but I wasn't really making any decisions, or I wasn't understanding how the customers were using that. A lot of the customers from our were recruiters or companies that were using our system, and so there wasn't, as a software developer, there wasn't an understanding on how any of those decisions were made, what kind of products need to be built, and things like that. And so naturally, my interest started peaking towards that side of the business, and in understanding what needs to be built. And that's how I started moving towards that.
Excellent. So when it comes to product development specifically, you started off, was this in college years where you knew you want to go head towards this side of technical expertise, or was this a bit later?
It was later. It was when I started working at Naukri. I started off thinking that I wanted to build things and develop things. And once I started doing that, I started getting more interested in why things were being built and what needed to be built. And so
Mhm.
that was my transition point after Naukri, when I started. So the next job that I took after that was with Smart Securities. It was based out of
Mhm.
Dubai. It's a financial services company.
Okay.
And so there I started leading tech initiatives. It was a traditional finance business. And we started introducing more technology and making processes more streamlined.
As they were introducing new technology, what did you notice about the products or the new developments that are coming to the company?
Um, so so a lot of things, right? I think the way I think about it is, first of all, understanding the customer's perspective and diving deep into uh, having deep conversations into why things matter or what needs to be prioritized is always super important. And once we started doing that, it is a skill. It is a product skill, right? To be able to
Certainly.
uncover the pain points, because you can always want more products or features, but it's important to, I guess, narrow down and understand
If it's
why those
necessary.
things exactly, right?
Okay.
And yeah.
So I've had the pleasure of really understanding from a different perspective as well. I was hearing this from Prashant Motwar, who I recently had on a podcast, that in his company, I believe it's called Equinix, in his experience, to truly understand the customer perspective, they tracked invoice disputes. They tracked what stage was there a potential invoice dispute of their products, and that's what they understood. Is this, are there certain gaps in their products? Are there certain needs that are not being met? So from your perspective, I guess when you entered this company or a little bit later on, what is your perspective on finding out what the customer actually needs?
Right. The simplest answer to that is asking the customer, but it's never that simple to get that response. So I can
Right,
give you an
right.
example here at Moxie. Right. It's a traditional business with a lot of things are spreadsheet driven, and so some things are very obvious. The internal stakeholder for me is the operations team, right? And so figuring out what processes exist first in the first place. So what I've done is I've mapped out all the different processes from customer retention side, from the sales side, from regular um inbound side. So I've identified the different touch points that exist
Mhm.
with our customer, and then based on that, what that journey looks like, right, from the time they are introduced to Moxie to the time they actually become a customer and they start getting the services on a recurring basis. And once I've identified those processes, then I start drilling down deeper. Right now, our focus is a lot on the sales and the retention side.
Mm,
It has been on the sales and the retention side. So I can give you an example where we're trying to our regular process right now had been the leads and the managers would observe a couple of phone calls with the customers and
sure.
try to understand if we're giving the Moxie service, right, that aligns with our standards. The
Hmm.
problem with that is when you listen to two or three phone calls for your frontline employees, you're missing out so much information that possibly exists in all of the other calls, right? Because they take a lot. They take a lot of calls. Each rep at least takes between like 50 to 100 calls every single day, right? And so
Sure.
when you listen to two calls in a month, that's nothing. And so we're
Yeah.
developing a system right now where we can observe and get insights from all of those interactions with the
Mm.
customer.
Mhm. So what you've done is you identified the touch points in the customer journey, and also you've understood what do we need to learn about specifically in regard to the customer perspective, and how can we do that at scale? Is really what I'm understanding. It's what you're doing now. So how does that interplay with product development specifically? When you see these insights from these calls, what is it utilized, or what has been utilized thus far, and how will it be utilized in product development?
Yeah. So now we know that the way I approach product development, and I think most product developers do this, is you develop an MVP version of something. And so um, our team's goal has been to use most minimal resources and test out
Hmm.
this hypothesis that if we start doing this at scale, does this actually help the team give a better experience, right?
Hmm.
So we've done that with sales. Right now we're doing that with the retention team, and we're the way we started is we started tracking all of those calls just in a simple spreadsheet
Hmm.
and flagging the calls that we think need to be observed and
Okay.
scoring them on the different metrics. Now, once we did that, the next phase is now to build an actual dashboard that can track all of these insights, give high level overview of what's happening within each specific department. And then
Hmm.
also, once you narrow down into a specific agent, what kind of coaching opportunities exist for that person. And so that's how we're thinking about it. That's
Love
the
it.
product that we build. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And what was also interesting to me is we discussed before the podcast that a lot of your work is done internally. The technology introduced is done internally. How do you know that an internal technology will have a positive impact on the customer side if you haven't practiced it yet in practice? I know you've been going through the MVP phase. You have been introducing potential new internal technology, but how do you know that's going to impact the customer positively?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way we do it here at Moxie is we have certain North Star metrics, right? Which is um, our organic growth rates, our retention rates. I think retention is something that immediately tells you whether your business is working or not. And then you kind of narrow down and break those metrics down into smaller pieces, right? So um, how does the inbound team interact? How do their interactions work towards driving that metric? How does the fields team, how does their team and their performance kind of drive that metric? And so then what should be tracked within each of those specific departments and teams? And once you break that down, and you have the smaller metrics, and you start working towards building solutions that
Mhm.
can help boost or drive those metrics. And that's how your internal development drives your metric for that team, which drives a metric for your North Star. And if you're able to do all of these things, you're eventually making an impact on the end customer.
Excellent. And I was looking through your profile, and I was looking and seeing that you were very much into artificial intelligence. What I'm curious about is your perspective on AGI. I've had a previous guest give their perspective and how that's going to impact software engineering roles. What's your perspective on AGI?
I think it's fantastic. The speed to development is drastic right now, right? And the way I'm seeing it, and some of the other tech leaders that I've spoken to, are saying the same thing, which is um, there is kind of this shift that started to happen. Earlier, what happened was businesses would operate, and as technology started getting better, SaaS businesses started coming up, right? They said, we can build these solutions for you faster and cheaper. And so everybody hopped on to start using SaaS platforms like Salesforce, HubSpot, things like that, Jira, right? And I was watching this video last week where some YouTuber was using Claude Code, and they developed an agile dashboard by themselves
Hmm.
within a couple of hours, right? And so it's becoming a lot more easier to actually start developing things in house, and so I think that's the shift that I see happening soon.
What do you think will become important for up and coming software engineers to focus on given this change?
I think it's always going to be important to know how to use artificial intelligence, because if you don't, it's not about AI will replace your job. And this is the conversation that we have at Moxie as well. AI is not going to replace your job, but someone who can use AI efficiently will. And so that's definitely my advice on thinking about building scalable systems and then using AI to help speed that process up.
Hmm. And do you see AGI specifically having a strong impact on product development as well?
Absolutely. I think personally, even for me, as I think through strategy, think through research, or even like research external or internal, I've been using AI quite a bit in in helping me break down different topics, structure my thinking, and so it's more like you are the pilot that's sitting on the seat and driving all of these tools that help you make an informed decision. And so within product development as well, and most other roles, I see this technology being used very frequently and often.
Interesting. And what was for you? What are you going to be focusing on then in the next couple of years? Given there's a strong change happening and probably going to continually happening, what are you going to be focusing on personally?
Um, so my boss and my goal is that we want to make Moxie the world's first AI-enabled pest control company,
Hmm.
and that's our vision. And what I see happening for this year specifically is that last year we had worked on developing a foundational system. So we got all of our data in one place into a data lake. Now, this year's focus is building on these dashboards and internal tools that the team can use to become more efficient. And that's the path that we're taking. So that's one. and we're going to focus on different teams and different departments. So marketing, retention, and even recruiting. So those are our three big initiatives.
And you're leveraging agentic AI, I'm assuming, for
Yep.
that.
So we're identifying processes, breaking them down, and
Mhm,
then building out agentic workflows for those
mhm.
processes.
Well, from what I understood beforehand from other technical executives, is that a lot of tasks that require creativity are limited to be done by agentic AI. But from your perspective, what is what are the limitations of agentic AI, and what should it be leveraged for now, given its capabilities?
Yeah. Um, I think the problem with AI is I personally believe it's really powerful, and if you can understand how to use it, you can do a lot of different things that most people think are not possible. Um, the challenge is in breaking it down into smaller pieces. I'll give an example, right? There are two recent AI workflows that we automated. One was our lead management system. So we had customers entering their information into our website. It would be sent as an email, and then somebody would go in, process those emails, understand it, send it to the correct representative, the sales rep, and
Mhm,
all that process took us about 20 minutes or so, from the time the customer sent their information to the time the
mhm,
sales rep got it. And so
mhm,
we've using AI processes, we were able to quickly read that email, process it, and um, and then send it to the rep immediately, instantly, within 30 seconds or so. Another process that we did was for our contact support. So our existing customers also send us emails. It could be about billing, it could be about um, rescheduling their service, and a lot of such cases. And so understanding which department does it need to go to. And so
mhm.
we create a task, and redirect those queries to the respective department. And we had a dedicated team of 4 to 5 people just doing that because of the scale
Wow.
of emails that were coming in. And so we were able to automate that process. And uh, uh, yeah.
Really interesting. And something I'll also comment on or ask about is, given that sales is sometimes a multi-stage process, there are different stages of the sales process. Is is agentic AI or the agents you use, are they able to detect certain stages that a lead could be in, and are they able to act upon that with the right actions?
Um, so we haven't gone so far towards understanding whether it's a hot or a cold lead.
Mhm.
Um, it's a little more difficult to understand sentiment, especially when we're
Right,
processing
right.
text.
Yeah.
Um, so, however, like on the retention side, we have started working towards that. So we're trying to transcribe phone conversations um, and identify a sentiment score for
Mhm.
every
Yeah.
conversation. And so, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. At some point, do you think it'll be able to accurately, assess the sentiment and what stages the lead could possibly be in?
I absolutely think it can. Even right now, it's fairly good at understanding the sentiment, um, by analyzing like keywords and things like that. I think how we how we have been using it is to track. We have certain metrics that we use to analyze phone conversations, and
Sure.
using that we can grade and score a conversation, right?
Mhm.
Um, the other side to it could be to give real-time feedback to our reps, and kind of like small prompts that can help them make the conversation better uh, on the spot. And that's something that would be amazing. That could possibly happen. I don't know yet.
Excellent. Well, that does sound promising if it can be executed. So what I'll do now is go ahead and shift this conversation to a little bit more about you, Raj. And the first question I have for you is, what is something about your life or about you that you wish more people knew about?
That's a great question. Sorry. I I think I'm not sure if a lot of people know about this, but my friends certainly do, who have been close to me, friends and family. I think uh, it's been it's been a journey of a lot of ups and downs,
Mhm,
with both professionally as well as personally. And
mhm,
so I think something that's helped me through is realizing that everybody has challenges, and you just gotta push through and stay committed and focused, and that really helps you kind of move forward.
mm. What allows you to keep pushing?
A lot of things. I think there is this internal drive to to be able to prove yourself, and
Mhm,
and you also know, I guess, that you're meant for more, uh, and so that kind of keeps pushing you towards doing the right things, building the right systems and processes for yourself, which enables you to keep moving ahead in life.
mm. You look like you're still in your 20s, but if you aren't, I guess
I'm
how have you
29.
changed? Yeah, you're 29. So how do you think you've changed the most between college years and now?
um, I'd say I've definitely become more mature and more calm over time. I think I take more time to understand people better, and where they come from and their perspective on things, rather than reacting. Um, I try to understand things better, and I think
Mhm.
that's really helped me both professionally as well as personally.
Why do you think understanding people, or let's just say general topics, is such an important focus for you? That alone is
Um,
a task or a goal.
yeah, no, I think a lot of times what happens is, um, for example, if you have conflicting conversations and you don't understand where the other person comes from, and you're trying to, a lot of people just try to put their perspective, try to get their perspective across, without actually hearing the other person. And if even one side of the conflicting parties takes the time and makes the other person feel heard, I think the conflict gets resolved naturally. And so
Mhm.
that's something that I've learned over time, I guess, and I'm still learning and working on.
Well, this is
Yeah,
this is why I think being open to people challenging your perspective or being open to different opinions is very important, because if someone strongly believes in an opinion, they have their own valid reasons as to why they believe in that. And if you can hear those valid reasons, potentially you're considering a perspective you never even considered beforehand. I think that's a very good point you're making about understanding people and understanding where they come from. Many people or many individuals come from a specific environment. They have a different influence. There could be a certain event they went through in their life. I think that's a very good point you're making that we don't really hear much of I'd say these days. So I appreciate that perspective. So what I'll do
yeah,
now is share a quick perspective regarding fitness and health, and we'll go ahead and conclude the podcast with Raj's plans for this year or the following year. So my primary perspective in regard to fitness and health, or I guess say my thesis, is really about challenging the requirements of making a physical transformation. Why I say this is because, as you know, Raj, a lot of my audience are entrepreneurs and executives, and there's this perception that fitness and health takes a lot of time. And to be fair, a lot of what people believe is that they need to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. And the issue with that perspective is that you have to commute to the gym, you have to come back from the gym, you have to get ready, you have to change. And that alone is 10 to 12 hours a week. So I think that there's a good argument as to why people should not prioritize fitness if they're an executive or an entrepreneur, given that time commitment. But if you really look at the main requirements of what it takes to make a physical transformation, it's not the time you spend going to the gym. It's your capacity to adhere to a negative energy balance. And that is, according to the National Institute of Health, there's really two things that really make that up. It's your movement, and it's really your nutrition or your calorie intake. Out of these two, what takes the time is actually our movement. So how can you
hmm,
do that in a time efficient way? You have to stop focusing on doing it in a location dependent manner, like in a gym or in a studio or yoga studio. the idea is, can you make that location independent, something you can do anytime and anywhere, as opposed to one fixed location? Because the days that you're stuck in the office, the days that you can't actually go to the gym, are days that are costing you progress. And when you travel, when you're taking calls, those are days you're going to miss, and eventually, at some point, you might not even get to the goal. So we can restructure it from the root. Then I think that that could be much bigger difference to how you operate and how you actually adhere to the process. So if we can focus on a location independent approach, I think that's going to be a lot more efficient. And what I would focus on is leveraging something like StepCom, because that's something you can do while you're listening to this podcast. It's something you can do literally while you're traveling. And as long as there's the ground underneath you, you can essentially do that. And that's actually what I personally use to lose over 70 pounds myself, which can be seen here. But one more point I'll also give is that I've gotten input from my past guests that they want an idea about muscle and putting on muscle. I still hold a very firm viewpoint that you don't need to go more than once or twice a week. If you spend 20, 30 minutes and you get stronger in those 20 minutes than you did the last week, that 20 minutes you spend in the gym is a lot more productive than 4 times a week. So it's really about understanding what are the requirements that move the needle in this problem, and how can you adhere to that or create a pathway that's as efficient as possible. So there are regimented ways to do things in fitness, and there's also efficient ways to do things. And you'd have to focus on understanding the requirements first to really be able to do that. And that's really my position, is understand the requirements and adhere to it in a very efficient way. So that's really my perspective. And I know that's a bit long, but I wanted to make sure that there's a viewpoint that is understood regarding how to be efficient, at least. So what we'll do then is go ahead and conclude that part of the conversation and move on to Raj's plans for this year or the coming year.
Well, personally, I did share a lot about professional stuff. Personally, I am also focusing a lot more on my health this year. And this is something that I've started listening to more. So I don't know if you know about this, but it's called Lean Health by Paul Akers. And it's a great perspective on how he considers health. And essentially, if I had to say it in one line, he says, treat your body like a Ferrari. And that's a very interesting perspective, and very valid too. So, yeah.
Well, I think that it's a good point. I would also say treating it as if it's your own business as well, right? Because your body is responsible for the energy you have. It's responsible for how you're perceived as an individual. Even though we don't dislike that, I dislike how people perceive you based on how you look, but that's unfortunately a little bit about the world, right? So that's an interesting perspective. So tell me about anything you haven't planned in regard to professionally, if you do have.
Well, I mean, I'm going to continue building those features and products for our internal teams, focusing on marketing, sales, retention, and so that's the plan, to move the needle and improve the lives of our customers.
Love it. I really appreciate the perspective you provided today on the podcast. I think I especially appreciated how you were able to identify what is the customer journey, what are the ways we can actually understand what they need, and actually, after understanding what they need, implement it into product development. I really appreciate that perspective, and really just you coming on the podcast and sharing your perspectives on AGI as well. So thank you. This was Aryan Mohindra and Raj